now, by the way.
So, and I mean, you're wearing red. That's the most
So we are
important.
live now, Arne.
Okay.
And welcome, everyone. You probably know by now that SAP BTP is the platform optimized for SAP applications, bringing together application development, data and analytics, integration, and AI capabilities. But did you know that we also offer 93 services as of today according to the Discovery Center? So today we will look into how to best manage all those applications, products, and services. By the end of the session, you will have learned how to best handle cross services across various domains, including operations, security, service level agreements, contracting, and more. A very warm welcome and thank you for joining. With me, I have my colleagues Toros Aledjian, co-moderator of the series, and the expert for SAP BTP cross topics, Arne Speck. Before introducing Arne, I would like to remind you that you will maybe have the opportunity to ask questions. Well, you had the opportunity to ask questions, but Arne already mentioned that he has so much to cover today. Yeah, so we will do our best to save time to answer your questions, but please post your questions in the chat nonetheless. We will try to make sure that we answer them. And with this, I would like to provide an overview of our series today. Give me a second to share the presentation. Here we go. So, our series covered 6 episodes, all covering the main columns of BTP. I can only advise you to look at all of them. They are really important, providing a concise update of all elements important to SAP BTP. And today we have this great session on common concepts and strategic direction, basically rounding up the entire series. And with this, I would like to hand over to Toros, over to you to provide an update on the sessions and introduce our expert. Thank you.
Thank you, Tania. Welcome, everyone. So, as Tania said, my name is Toros Aledjian. Great to have you here in our 6th and final episode. We have other upcoming events planned in the month of April. So on April the 10th, if you're interested, that's next week. We are doing a quarterly webinar on what's new in SAP DataSphere. So if you want to join us to see what the updates are for the first quarter of 2024, please do join us. I will put all of the links to these events in the chat as we move forward. On April 10th, on the same day, Unlock the Value of SAP HANA Cloud, featuring Lexmark. On April the 17th, we have SAP BTP, Ask Me Anything on SAP HANA Cloud. On April the 23rd, we're starting a whole new series, SAP BTP DevOps and Observability in Action. This is a full 8-episode webcast series where 2 of the sessions will be on YouTube and the remaining sessions will be on Zoom. So if you're interested in that, please do join us there. On April the 24th, SAP Cloud ALM for SAP BTP Operations. On April the 25th, what's new with SAP BTP in Q1 2024. And on April the 30th, Rise with SAP AI Webcast, Harness the Full Potential of Business AI. We also have a number of BTP Champion Days being planned. Our next one is in Chicago. Unfortunately, the seating there is complete, but stay tuned for others we're planning in the following months. Next slide. Also, if you're interested, there's a number of other forums, BTP forums, the SAP BTP Garage Series. Our next one will be on April the 17th. We have the SAP Screen Personas Practitioners Forum held every third Wednesday of every month. The SAP Fiori UX held every third Thursday of every month. And the SAP BTP Practitioners Forum held the third Tuesday of every month. And the SAP Build held the second Tuesday of every month as well. Next slide. I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, my colleague Arne Speck, Product Manager for SAP Business Technology Platform. Arne is a Product Manager for the SAP Business Technology Platform, focusing on the platform-related cross-services topics. During his past 18 years at SAP, Arne was working in several different roles in the area of SAP's technology portfolio with a strong customer focus. I'd like to introduce now Arne. Arne, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Toros and Tania, for having me again here in one of the sessions. So let's directly dive, as Tania already mentioned. I have a lot prepared for today, so let's directly into the material. First thing I'd like to mention is a little bit on what are you going to see in this next hour. So basically, I'm going to explain a little bit around the general topic. So we will not talk about any individual services of BTP. We will take the administration console as the guideline through the session, and then dive down into some concepts we have in BTP, and at some points we might do an outlook into the future for roadmap or strategy related topics. So this is why I have to show you the disclaimer. So there might be things in my presentation that SAP might change in the future when it comes especially to those outlook-based topic like roadmap or strategy-related topics. So let me start with a short recap, and I hope that everyone in the audience already saw this picture that outlines SAP's general strategy. So we're looking at the business processes, so at your business processes, where we want to provide, of course, also the AI capabilities with our platform and help you operate your processes, especially if they consist out of our application portfolio, but also the partner solutions that really make up your business processes. And we're doing this with the business technology platform and the 5 pillars that you already have seen throughout this series that we're doing here, but also, of course, in hopefully a lot of other presentations that you have heard. So if we dive a little bit deeper then into the business technology platform and the information here, you will see the different topics that we're addressing with the different pillars in the platform. Nevertheless, as I want to also show you where you get more information, other information to actually start your journey with business technology platform, I would like to introduce you some information resources that are very important when it comes to the BTP as a central platform. So let me first open up the SAP Discovery Center. I'm pretty sure that a lot of you will already know this central entry point to information with that or on BTP. So this whole page is divided into 3 sections. So it's missions, reference architecture, and services. So let's start with the services. So if you want to have more detailed information on the different services that we are offering on BTP. So here you also see the number that Tania was referring to into the introduction. There's 93 services that we're offering currently. On BTP, you will find here additional information on all of the different services. We can go into the details. We find a short overview that shows a little bit what the services are doing. Often there's a short video, interesting links to help pages, feature descriptions, but also tutorials and learnings. Information on pricing and the different models. We will cover that in a second also, where you get information and also have an estimator to calculate maybe how much a certain project will cost with the required services for if you're running it on BTP. We have roadmap information on the dedicated services here, where you can get an information about what will be potentially added to the different services in the nearer future. And then now coming from this section and lead to the other sections in the Discovery Center. So I mentioned there are 3. So we also link here to so-called missions. And these missions are actually, they are kind of learnings where you on the system really can create certain scenarios, deploy certain solutions, like in this case, for example, the integration of events from Amazon Monitron and S/4HANA. And you will have a project board where you really have different phases that help you and guide you to through the implementation of that scenario or mission, on how we're doing that. This is also supported, so on the one hand side, of course, by the community, but on the other hand side, we also have a dedicated mission experts that if you're stuck somewhere or something, you can contact, and they will help you actually really go through all the different steps here whenever you're in trouble. There might be also links to other resources. So in this case, reference architecture blog. Reference architecture is a very good bridge to the 3rd session that we're having in Discovery Center, which is exactly the information on reference architecture, which means how do you set up certain scenarios, especially interesting when it comes to the cooperation with some hyperscaler services. So for example, how does that look like? If you want to know how you can, for example, leverage data coming from your backend system, like in S4 HANA or something, and you want to leverage that in some of Google's services, then we have some recommendations around the architecture that we created together, in this case also with Google here. So in this case, leveraging DataSphere and the description, the services that are there, and really also the related missions again, where you can say, okay, how can you set up these reference architecture and bring them to life in reality? Now, as you saw, Discovery Center is really focusing on the BTP capabilities and the use cases that you can achieve with that. Nevertheless, BTP is also a business technology platform that lives to a huge extent also from the content that we deliver as SAP and also our partners, not to forget them, that we deliver to be used in the different BTP services. So the second page I would like to introduce to you again. I hope it's not a very new thing for most of you, but if you not have heard it, so the Business Accelerator Hub is our central page where we provide information on content that helps you to work and individualize the processes that you have created or that you are running with the help of our business solutions. There are different possibilities on how you can browse through the different information and content that is available here. So you can step in via products. You can look how a certain business process can be individualized, extended, or how you can set this up. There are content categories, you have industries, or you know what you're searching for from a different from a specific partner. You can have a look here. So if we go into this Explore tab, we see the same structure here. And let's maybe in this case start with a product. Let's take S/4HANA Public Cloud. And you see there we have this entry page for this product in this case. with all the things that are available for S/4HANA public cloud. So description of the APIs, description of the events, the CDS views that you can leverage, the objects that are released for our ABAP cloud development, also called developer extensibility. We have the integrations with this solution. We have the business processes that are supported by this solution. And we have also build assets and artifacts that we can reuse for our build portfolio being part of BTP. So if I scroll down a little bit, you will find here then one of the main requested content types that we're looking for, which is the integrations. So you can see the pre-delivered integrations that we are delivering for SAP S/4HANA public cloud. And you will see then all the different solutions where we offer pre-delivered content. So for example, if we want to do business in Portugal, we can filter on that, and then we will see, okay, there are two things where we have integration content available. So one is, for example, that you need to register specific transports. That's one scenario. The other scenario is for tax authorities. So we are delivering the content for our integration suite in this case. So if we drill down into such an integration package, you will see the different integration flows and also the package overview. And from here, you are basically also, it is also possible to add this directly to the integration suite. So if I am logged in, I have to see if yes, I'm logged in. So if I want to add this to my integration suite, because I want to implement this scenario now, I can register my personal cloud integration, so integration suite tenant here, and can say I directly want to leverage this content. So now this package, this integration content package, is transferred to my BTP integration suite. So I can log on to integration suite. So here you see now I'm in the tenant of integration suite, and I am in the cloud integration. This also works the other way around. So what you're seeing now is really all the content that is available for integration on API Business Hub in the Discover tab here. But if we move to the tab where we actually are designing our integrations, we will find someone for Portugal. Yes, you see here, and it was just added to this like 1 minute ago. So this is then exactly the integration content for this scenario, where we will find then all the integration flow that we can configure and then really make use. So of course, we have to configure it now, and then directly make use of this scenario, and which enables us to really then communicate with the tax authorities in Portugal to do our necessary communication. So if we go back to the Business Accelerator Hub, I told you it's not the only content type that we're seeing with the integration content. So the other example I wanted to show you is for build process automation as being part of BTP. So you also find here then business process templates that you can reuse and configure and reconfigure to your needs, task automations with robotic process automation as part of build automation. So that's something that you can use then similar here and find in the Business Accelerator Hub. Now, it's great that we have the content, we have the services, we have the missions that you can use. So now the question is, how do you come to BTP and how can you try out all those things? So basically what I would like to give you as a starting point, if you're not already have access to a BTP tenant, go to the SAP store, and you see, as we are quite an important topic for SAP, we are covered here directly as featured solution. If you're going into the business technology platform here, you will find the respective information on how you can come to BTP. So you will also see that there's a 90 days trial, for example. We have the free tier, and we have also the information on the commercial models. So I made it a little bit simpler for you, and I brought it together in a single slide. So what you're seeing here is actually, let me shortly explain about the different models that we're having. So what you saw on the page is that we offer a trial version of BTP that lasts for 90 days, which is really meant to do learning and evaluation. And this is always a very good solution, for example, also if you want to try out those missions that we saw on Discovery Center. Let me skip free tier for a sec and come back to that a little bit later. Now coming to the commercial models that have a price tag behind. So the first thing that I would like to introduce to you is the pay-as-you-go model. So in this case, you're doing a contract, giving your billing information, and then you have the broadest set of BTP services available. You can consume all of them, try them out, work with them, also run productive solutions. And at the end of the month, you will get an invoice from SAP for the amount of resources and so on that you consumed. And that is then deducted from your credit card or whatever payment information is used here. So the other model I would like to introduce is the SAP BTP or Cloud Platform Enterprise Agreement. This is basically a pre-commitment model on a specific amount of value that you can use for the services, which means that with this pre-commitment, we are able to give you better prices because we can also do our calculations much better when it comes to cost. And you have nearly the same set of services as with the pay-as-you-go model, and you are able to access those services, use them, and consume them. But here you have a fixed pre-commitment of usage that you are paying, and then the usage is deducted from the like a prepaid model from the so-called cloud credits that you have bought before. So now coming back to the free tier model, because both of them, so the pay-as-you-go model as well as the enterprise agreement model, give you access to the free tier model, which means that for most of the services we have in BTP, there are so-called free tier service plans, which means that you have the possibility to use those services with some restrictions in how much resources you have, how many users you have, depends a little bit on the metric of the individual services, but you can use those service plans to try and test those services without billing you anything. So no matter if you have a pay-as-you-go, as long as you stay in the free tier, we will not deduct any money from you. And with the enterprise agreement, we will not deduct any cloud credits if you're sticking to this free tier model, which is a perfect solution if you want to try out specific services without any cost occurring to you by the usage of that trial. And then the last model, it's called here subscription. It's a little bit misleading. We're always also referring to a la carte subscription, which means that you have the possibility to do contracts with an individual set of services that have a dedicated amount also on usage. So that has the big advantage that, for example, if you exactly know what scenario with what type of consumption you're having for a dedicated list of services, this gives sometimes, not always, but sometimes some opportunities to do that at a little bit more attractive price than the enterprise agreement. Just because, of course, we know exactly also what you are going to use, which makes it much easier to calculate also our resources here. So that's also the possibility. Nevertheless, it comes with a huge disadvantage that if you want to use another service, you would have to go back to your seller, to the store, or see how you can actually can come up with a solution to use the service. Nevertheless, it's also possible to combine the subscription contract with, for example, an enterprise agreement or with a pay-as-you-go contract, which then means you can also combine that in a single global account so that everything that goes beyond what you have in your a la carte subscription contract then will be booked according to the enterprise agreement contract. So that is the concept when we look at the commercial situation. Now, once you have actually then got your account or subscribed for it, the question is how do you access it and how do you work with that? So what you're getting actually is an email, or the technical contact person in the contract is getting an email with a link to a so-called global account. So what does that mean? Let's have a look at what is going to happen when you are pressing actually the link. So let me open up the link, what you will see. So basically what happens is that the so-called BTP cockpit is being brought up. So unfortunately, I am already logged in here. Nevertheless, just for your information, how does that work? I mean, this is your global account. So basically, I said that the technical contact person in the contract will get this email with the link. And what is being done here is that normally, if you click on that link, you would have seen a login screen that asks for your SAP Universal ID. So, and what can you see out of that? There is an authentication. So there is also an identity provider behind, which is initially always our SAP ID service. So your universal, so your SAP Universal ID will be used to log in, and you can also see that. So if you look at the structure here, we see the menu to the left side. We have the security tab here. Let's shortly move to that. We see the trust configuration. And in the trust configuration, you will see that there is this default identity provider always established initially. That means you can leverage SAP ID service also for all the other administrators that you have for BTP. So there is no need to change. And for a long time, it was the only solution. So all your SAP BTP administrators had to have a universal ID. Nevertheless, some customers prefer to use also for the administration their own identity provider. So you can then use here and create and add other identity authentication providers. This can be our SAP identity authentication service, also delivered from BTP, but this can also be another identity provider that you have already in place. So for the global account, we are giving some role collections in standard that you can use and assign to your users that are then managed by this identity provider. There are two main role collections. There is the administrator and viewer to have access to this global account area here within the BTP cockpit. And yeah, you can administer then and assign this to dedicated users or directly go to the users and add users that are managed by your identity provider. So now what do you do here on this main or entry level into the administration console of BTP. So the first thing that you're seeing here is the so-called Account Explorer. And in this Account Explorer, you really manage then the sub-accounts. And we're coming a little bit later to exactly what these sub-accounts contain and include. But basically, these sub-accounts are really the places where all the things happening. So where you enable services, where you deploy your applications that you're creating, where you're using software as a service related services like integration suite. So nevertheless, if you think about in your overall company, how these sub-accounts might be structured. So you might have subsidiaries. You might want to structure it into LOBs because you have a decentralized IT. You have central IT functions that might need also access to BTP sub-accounts. You have, of course, the task to say, okay, how do I handle my landscape management when it comes to tiering? So you need to have accounts or tenants where you're doing your development, your testing, and in the end, the productive environment. So you can imagine that a lot of starters, customers that start with BTP figure out that after a short amount of time, it's really hard to manage all those different sub-accounts. So we introduced the concept of directories, and you see already here that somebody did some structuring, like for example, here for the finance area, for the sales, can also be in nested structures. And we are calling those folders, as we would call them here in the tree structure, we are calling them directories. So you have the possibility to create here either sub-accounts or directories and give that a name and really bring that into a structure. That's not the only thing. You also have the possibility to create custom properties, also labels called here, where you give additional information that helps you maintain, manage your account landscape. So very typical examples are responsible person, contacts, cost center, to which the costs of that sub-account might be then delivered, department information, and so on, so that you also can, when you're doing your analysis, for example, about what has been consumed by which sub-accounts, that you can use also this information to structure, filter it down, for example. And it also gives the possibility to enable user management on directory level. So we saw that we have the user management here on a global account level. So you could also assign predefined roles like an administrator for a directory if you want to have user management on directory level. Nevertheless, just one remark, if you have a nested structure of directories, only one directory in this path can really do this user management individually. And if this is enabled, you can also do entitlement management. So we did not talk about entitlement management. So let's do that on the global account level. So back in the structure of the global account, we have the so-called entitlement handling. What does that mean? So if you go to the services assignments here, you will find a list of all the services that you are able to consume depending on your contract. So as said, if you're having a la carte subscription-based contract where you only have like 3 or 4 services as part of the contract, you would only see those services. So it's of course different if you have a pay-go or a BTP, an enterprise agreement contract. Then you will of course see here all the different services that you can use from on a global level. Nevertheless, the entitlement management allows you to restrict the usage of services on sub-account or directory level. So meaning that you could, for example, let's make an example here for the Cloud Foundry runtime. You can say, okay, depending on my contract, so if this was an enterprise agreement or a pay-go contract, I wouldn't have here this number of 5 units. So in my case, I have the limit by contract, let's say. This is an internal construct that I'm using here. And you can assign now a specific amount, depending on the metric, of course, of the service, to your directories or to your sub-accounts. So how does that look like? Let's take this as an example of Cloud Foundry runtime. It's the metric is memory. So basically it's gigabytes of memory. So I have 5 gigabytes and I assigned it, in this case, to one entity. So if I drill down, I see I have a sub-account, which is called Central PM Sandbox. I assigned 5 units of overall 5 units that I have in my global account to this specific sub-account, which means now the sub-account administrator will be able to leverage, or also the developers to leverage those 5 gigabytes of memory in their sub-account. And if you want to have services, for example, that are not or should not be consumed at all, you can also restrict then the usage. Now, for a lot of services, and let me go to the list for maybe this specific sub-account that we just saw. So that's the other way. You can see here what is included. And you could also here add then or change the entitlements for the specific sub-account. Sometimes you have something stating assigned 1 unit and you cannot really change that, and also not set a quota limit. Maybe let me explain or give you an example why this does not work with all services. Let's assume you're a developer and you want to use Business Application Studio, so our development environment. So potentially you're not only involved in a single project, but in more than one project, which also might mean that you are working in several different sub-accounts with several different instances of the Business Application Studio. So basically, if we would count this or restrict this on sub-account level, we would need to also meter it on sub-account level, which we do not want to do, right? A developer that uses Business Application Studio should be counted just one time and not several times, depending on the number of sub-accounts or instances of Business Application Studio where they are residing on. So for these type of services, we cannot just restrict to a certain amount because there is a global quota and everything comes together in this global quota. Okay, so let's go back. What did we learn so far? So we have the global account. We have the user management for the global account administration here with the roles and the users and the identity providers. So as identity providers, initially ID service, but also the possibility to have other identity providers. We saw that we have the structuring with the help of the directory and the custom properties. We also have this custom properties, by the way, in sub-accounts that you can classify this way. Now, what else did we see? We also saw that we are doing entitlement management, so also for the directories or for the different sub-accounts. And yes, in the directories, there's also the possibility to enable user management and entitlements also on directory level. So now coming to our sub-accounts. So basically, if we have a look at the overall BTP platform, we will see the services, we will see the runtimes, and we will see the hyperscaler. So what do you need to do and how does such a sub-account actually look like? So if you want to create a sub-account, the first thing you need to do is to choose a region, like Amazon and Frankfurt, for example, which is then, for example, region EU10. So what does that mean? Basically, we're referring here to the region as they are defined by the hyperscaler providers that we're leveraging for the infrastructure for BTP. So it's our partners, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform and Alibaba. If you take a closer look at their regions and their understanding of their data center regions, basically they divide their regions into so-called availability zones. So let's assume we took AWS Frankfurt. Then, to be honest, if you really look closer and drive to Frankfurt and search for the data center, you will see that basically these are 3 different locations surrounding Frankfurt in this case, completely decoupled when it comes to power, cooling, or network connectivity, which helps them to create better results when it comes to availability, of course. So what we are doing for our services when we talk about high availability, we also leverage this concept of multi-AZ, multi-availability zone configuration for our services to achieve better availability, meaning that if one of those locations or availability zones for some reasons is not available, we're using the failover capabilities of the hyperscalers here to still have the service in a working mode. So as we started, before actually the infrastructure providers started to offer those multi-availability zone setups of the regions, we decided for all our services to go that path. Nevertheless, there are very few services left that are still running in a 1AZ region setup. And so now, where do you find the information on that? And overall, what's the information on our service level agreement when it comes to availability? So basically, I want to introduce you into that concept. So for all cloud services that are delivered by SAP, there is a central document. This is the service level agreement for SAP Cloud Services that states out that those services have an availability, a guaranteed availability of 99.7%. If not overruled by additional terms of the individual solutions. And this is exactly what BTP did. So there is a supplemental terms and conditions document that states that for BTP services, the availability is 99.9%, if not overruled by another document for an individual service. And also then, we will find additionally the service description guide for BTP, where actually for each and every BTP service, you will find then the information on the service level agreement. And most of them are actually running on 99.95%. And this step is really then the step coming from a single availability zone concept to a multi-availability zone concept that we're running for the services where we are able to give that 99.95% service level agreement for availability. Okay, so where do you find all this information? Basically, you will find this information on the SAP Trust Center, where you find all the documents that I was mentioning here. So after we decided for a region, and by the way, let me give you some insights on that. So currently we are having 21 regions enabled with BTP, so you can choose from 21 regions worldwide. Let me give you an interesting information. SAP decided to invest heavily into the data center build out for BTP. And so I'm happy to tell you that SAP decided to have until the end of 2025 at least 10 new locations where we will provide BTP from. Some of them are already in the roadmap, like, for example, Israel, Brazil, Japan, and Australia. So you will hear some more announcements with that and on the dedicated locations in the very near future. So look out for that. Very great to know that we are building out here our environments. So now coming to the next thing that we need or want to decide within our sub account, and that's basically the runtime environment that we want to choose to run services or operate our own applications. And let's do a short outlook into our runtime strategy. So we have 3 strategic runtimes we're supporting with BTP today. Let me very clearly emphasize that Cloud Foundry is absolutely strategic for SAP. There are a lot of rumors because some competitors stepped out of Cloud Foundry. There are some reference architectures for cloud native applications that really see a Kubernetes-based runtime as requirement to run modern applications. We had a look at our customers, and we see for most of our customers and the majority of scenarios, Cloud Foundry is an ideal runtime because it's very simple. You do not have to have any detailed knowledge on Kubernetes clusters or whatever. You can really focus on the business value of your application and your coding. So it absolutely makes sense to support Cloud Foundry. Nevertheless, yes, we also want to look in the future, and there are some certain scenarios where a Kubernetes-based runtime might offer some advantages. This is why we're additionally offering Kima as a runtime. Nevertheless, both run Java, Node.js apps, for example. So we also made sure that the cloud application programming model is applicable to both of them. So you can really create CAP applications and then in the end deploy, if you want to deploy them to Kima, if you want to deploy them to Cloud Foundry or even to both. What we had to do to achieve that is, of course, that we needed to make our services cross-consumable. So there are very few services left that are only consumable by Cloud Foundry, but the majority of services now is consumable from both runtimes. So, which also makes it easy to transfer solutions between those two. So if you want to port an application that you created on Cloud Foundry to Kima because you say, yeah, now we reached a level where we need to scale in such masses that a Kubernetes-based environment would be preferably for our scenario. This is very easily possible. And of course, as we're SAP, we have the ABAP environment enabling you to create decoupled ABAP cloud-based applications and extensions for our business application scenario. So let's go into the Cloud Cockpit again and see how this looks like in detail. So now you see I'm still on the global account level, but we selected already our sub-account here to have a look at the entitlements. So now I'm drilling one area or level deeper into our BTP cockpit, into our administration console. So now I'm not on global account level anymore. I'm on sub-account level. So of course I need to have also then the respective role as a user here for the administration of the sub-account. So what do we see here? So we have the information on the data center region or the BTP region. So in this case, it's Amazon Web Services here in Europe. We see the environments, like on this sub-account, we have an enabled Cloud Foundry environment. Kima is not enabled. And we again see here the list of services that we are entitled to use. Now, if we really want to use these services, then we can go to the Services tab here in our menu and find the Service Marketplace. And this Service Marketplace now really only shows the services that we are entitled to use from the contract, as well as the entitlements on that specific sub-account. So you can choose this service and then you can enable it. So we have to distinguish between two different kinds of service plans. Service plans where you need to instantiate. So you need to have something locally deployed on your specific sub-account because it can operate via API, or you need endpoints, something. Or for some services that we're offering, it's a pure application service plan, which means you only create a subscription to the respective service. And then in the instances and subscription tag, you will see actually all the services with the subscription service plans that you are consuming or where you did the subscription, and also the instantiated services here in the respective environment. So then, of course, you have the possibility to create your applications, your own developments, and you can do that either for Cloud Foundry or you can manage here your HTML5 locations. Now, two more things that we need to talk about, and that's first the connectivity. So if you're creating applications, for example, and you want to create extensions for business applications, it's very important, of course, to communicate with the system, no matter if they are in the cloud or on-premise or in a private cloud environment. So BTP uses a concept called destinations, where we are actually kind of wrapping the original API and expose it to the internal development or deployment areas so that you can reach those destinations. Why do we kind of wrap this? Let me give you just one example where this is very important. Think about transporting through the landscape, right? You're creating an extension for an S4 system. So of course, in the development system, you want to connect to the S4 development system. Whereas, of course, in the productive environment, you need to connect to the productive backend system. So the developer will only use that destination to code against. And then in the different sub-accounts where you're transporting then your extension, the endpoint for the destination will point to the different systems. So another thing that is very important then is how do I connect to on-premise system? I mean, it's easy if we're talking to cloud-based systems where we have an available API endpoint in the public internet. Nevertheless, if I want to connect to either on-premise services or applications, or if I maybe want to have a connection to a service that is operated in a private environment of one of the hyperscalers, then we have the options to use our private link service or to use our on-premise proxy type here. And when we're using this on-premise proxy type, we are communicating via a solution called Cloud Connector. Let me briefly explain how this works. So we have the service subscriptions. Now coming to this Cloud Connector. How does that work? This Cloud Connector is a component that is installed locally, either in your on-premise landscape or on your private landscape within the hyperscalers. And this solution actually creates, outbound, a secure tunnel to your sub-account. So as this is initiated from within your firewall system and your internal network, you do not need to have any open ports here to communicate to that Cloud Connector, right? So now you have this open TLS tunnel. Then you can actually define which APIs of the system you want to expose to that specific sub-account to be used. And then you can create this destination against this endpoint that are exposed by the Cloud Connector to the sub-account. And after that, the developers can use those destinations to actually do their coding against this specific destination. The destination then will have a look what is the endpoint behind. It will contact the right Cloud Connector. So you can also have more Cloud Connectors connecting to a single sub-account, or one Cloud Connector also connecting to several sub-accounts on BTP, both directions. Nevertheless, they will approach the Cloud Connector. And the Cloud Connector actually then has a look, is this, and we also have a whitelisting application on this sub-account entitled to use this API. And if that's the case, they will then bring the request. And that's the interesting part, also with local authentication to the systems, which means that this whole process also allows then to use single sign-on. So if you have an extension and a customer logs on to the BTP application you built via your identity provider, the same user will be used when logging in to the backend system, so that you really have single sign-on, and in the backend system you will see that the right user actually did also for monitoring purposes the actions in the respective system. So you see, with all those things, you can create your custom applications, and we have the complete pictures on those concepts we are seeing in the administrative console. Nevertheless, I also have to admit, you saw that all I did by hand on a manual way. To be honest, that's not applicable for most of the customers that use BTP in a broader extent. So there are, of course, necessities to automate those administrative tasks. We have different approaches how you can do that. So first thing, some of you might have seen that on the global level of the BTP cockpit are so-called boosters, where you can use guided procedures, I would call them, even though that's in SAP context maybe a term that we used for something else in the past. You will have, let's say, helpers that create for you, for example, sub-accounts with a specific purpose. So, for example, if you want to create a build code project, you will have a booster that will set up all the required services, do the subscriptions, do the instantiations and the configurations of the services for you, so that you can actually directly start to leverage build code to create and deploy your application here. Nevertheless, also those boosters are a great help, but if you really do BTP in a broader scale, you would want to create your own automations to do those administrative tasks, and therefore we're offering command line interfaces or the command line interface for BTP and also APIs. And what we also provide, and I don't know who of you is familiar with Terraform. So Terraform is basically a solution not by SAP, but more or less an industry standard for managing infrastructure. So also referred to as infrastructure as code. So it does not only include the possibility to do administrational tasks in BTP, but also in more than 1,000 different cloud providers. So we are now also providing a so-called Terraform provider, which enables you to do a lot of those administrational stuff within Terraform and use that for the automation of your tasks. So with this, I have an overview here about our service portfolio that links also to the Roadmap Explorer, simply saying for each of the services, we saw that before also in the Discovery Center, you will find roadmap information here directly, Roadmap Explorer, so roadmaps.sap.com if you want to have individual information on the different services. Looking at some strategic considerations on what BTP is and what is the role, if we look at it for SAP, we see it for four main purposes. So first of all, it's in our internal development platform to create new business applications. An example would be Sustainability Control Tower. It's an independent solution from SAP. Nevertheless, it's running on top of BTP and was completely developed there. There are a lot more than 50 applications already completely running on BTP. Nevertheless, in many cases, only some services are used for different applications, like HANA Cloud, for example, is the persistency for most of the cloud applications that SAP is offering. But sometimes we also directly give the functionality of some BTP services and embed it into our business applications. So an example here would be that if you are a user of SAP, the Service Cloud, then we enabled to leverage build apps directly inside Service Cloud to create extensions for the SAP Service Cloud. So we're leveraging, and it's also what we're doing with AI. So you heard about our embedded AI strategy, so our business AI strategy. This is exactly what we're doing here, right? We're running and managing the AI scenarios for the applications on top of BTP and integrate them into the applications. Then it's also the platform to unify the experience of our different application experiences. So for example, all of these services leverage the cloud identity service to do authentication, to create single sign-on, and so on. And this is what we were talking about today, it's our external innovation platform. So it's our platform to support you to get the most out of your business processes that you created on top of our applications. So whenever you need to extend, integrate, or individualize the processes, BTP is definitely the platform that we're giving to you with a strong focus on the business. So an example here about how we're doing this is the cloud application programming model, which is really domain focused and helping you to do that. Last slide, Tania, so I see that you are already a little bit nervous, is really about our focus areas we see strategically for 2024. On the one hand side, is really trying to support our customers to come from their on-premise landscapes to the cloud. So especially that's interesting for example, our PIPO customers. Developer experience, build code has been just released or went general available 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago, I don't know. So really, we want to focus and to really work on the development experience, have a look at also the possibility to combine different development approaches like pro code together with no code developers. Artificial intelligence, of course, you had a session on that. And again, it's really also the business semantics, really talking about the B in the business technology platform, creating more content packages, making it easier to really connect through the systems and extend the processes. And with this, simply some more information. One thing I would highlight, if I have 10 more seconds, that's the BTP guidance framework for the different roles, where you will find specific informations for architects, developers, administrators, our methodologies. So that's really something I would like to advise you or recommend to use. And with that, Tania, I know there's not much time. No, there's no time left for questions. I'm so sorry. Again, this happened. Nevertheless, I'm pretty sure that I will get the questions afterwards, and I will be happy to answer all of them.
Yeah, I would recommend that keep your questions coming, and then we can give them to Arne, and then we can provide a document, Tania, maybe.
Yes.
With each question, we can provide an answer. So if just keep your questions coming, we'll have the chat open for a little bit before we sign off. I know that Tania wants us.
And even after, should you no longer be able to post questions in the chat, just post them in the comments area underneath the webcast. Might take some time though that to open up, or just send us your questions. We will make sure to answer them. There are not very many questions actually, but
not
yeah.
until now. After you said so, I'm pretty sure that there will be a lot of questions.
No worries. We will make sure that those questions are answered. I've already copied them. Awesome. Arne, it was a really, really great presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I had to rush a little, so next time I will have not that much content with me.
It was awesome. Totally different aspects we haven't shared so far. It was a great addition to our entire series, a great end to our series. And of course, a big thank you to all attendees for joining. I hope you got a lot of value from this session and all the other sessions as well. And as we mentioned, feel free to contact us. Feel free to post your questions in the comments area. We will answer them. And with
Great.
this,
Thank you also from my side.
thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great morning, a great evening, depending on where you are. And looking forward to seeing you in one of our other sessions. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.